Chris Lee and Blayne Gilmer, our 14 here previewing Florida's road trip to Kroger Field and Lexington, Kentucky. Both teams winners this past Saturday. Florida beat Charlotte in kind of an uneventful blowout with 3 starting offensive linemen out. Kentucky, I saw in person, was in the press box for that one in its game against Vanderbilt in Nashville. The Wildcats, a 45-28 win, 2 defensive touchdowns, both pick sixes by Max Hairston. The offense was very uneven. We'll get into that in just a bit, but very intrigued to see how this one plays out, Blayne. Everyone has got this basically as they pick them on a neutral field. We'll get into these specifics later, but can't wait to see this one. Florida, Kentucky, Saturday, in a game that will be, I think, a huge boost for whoever gets the win here.
And these games always seem to be close with Florida and Kentucky. They always seem to be nip and tuck. It always seems to be, even dating back to, 5-6 years ago, this thing started to get competitive here when it had been largely one-sided with Florida for a long, long time. Mark Stoops, you got to give him credit where he's brought this Kentucky program. They have a calling card. They play really, really tough defense. They try to be efficient offensively. And I think Billy Napier is trying to bring, honestly, part of that same mentality to Florida. Chris, he's trying to say, hey, we're going to run the football. We're going to be efficient in the passing game, and we're going to play lights out on defense now that he's got Austin Armstrong as his defensive coordinator. So I think you're looking at 2 programs that are kind of going to be looking across at each other and trying to look in the mirror a little bit, Chris, with how their style of play and how they go about things. So it is going to be an intriguing matchup there in Lexington this upcoming weekend. Excited to get into the details of it here.
Yeah, both teams are going to want to get after you and be physical in the trenches and run the ball. Let's start with when Florida tries to do that. The results have been very uneven so far. Great against Tennessee in that upset 2 weeks ago. Didn't get a chance to run it against Utah. And I think you said kind of pedestrian against Charlotte, although, again, 3 starting offensive linemen out probably had something to do with that. Gators averaging 27.8 per game. Kentucky giving up 15.5. Florida has run at 54% of the time, 5.2 yards per rushing play. Kentucky giving up 3.6 there. Gators 7.4 per passing play. Kentucky giving up 4.9 there. The big stat, though, Florida turning it over on just 1.5% of snaps. That's very good. Kentucky forcing turnovers on 3% of snaps even. Kentucky with 11 sacks really got after Vanderbilt's A.J. Swann last week and forced a lot of mistakes. So Florida's going to want to run the ball in this one and going to have a good game from Graham Mertz when he throws the ball, because Kentucky has shown it can make you pay if you're a little bit off with your delivery.
Yeah, they're opportunistic. They play a just tough brand of defense with Mark Stoops there. We know that Florida, like you said, with the offensive line issues, they didn't run the ball as well against Charlotte. I believe only 136 yards total. You had Montrell Johnson was leading rusher with 63 yards. That's just not kind of what Florida wanted to do. Only 22 points on the night against Charlotte. So like you said, it was just kind of a pedestrian effort, kind of a lackluster performance, but hey, a little bit of a letdown after a big emotional win against Tennessee there in the Swamp. A little bit understandable, particularly with the offensive line issues. But Graham Mertz continues to play good, efficient football. 20-23. Can this Kentucky defense get a little bit more pressure? They don't have a ton of sacks and things like that on the year. I think Trevin Wallace leads them with 3. J.J. Weaver, of course, is really good. He can be disruptive over there. They got Deion Walker, who's big in the middle, and I think Deion Walker is going to be huge, literally and figuratively, in the attempt of trying to stop the Florida run game, which is very creative under Billy Napier. Some people think, well, it's just running. He does a really good job of creating angles, of creating cutback lanes, all this kind of stuff for Florida in their run game. So excited to see those 2 sides match up, but I think you're going to see the experience and the continuity of Brad White and that Kentucky defense versus really, Billy Napier and company trying to get some new playmakers going. Ricky Pearsall's had a had a heck of a run to start off with, and Graham Mertz on the road. So we'll see.
Kentucky is averaging 38 points a game. Florida giving up just 13.5. The Cats are throwing it 58% of the time when they do, 8.1 yards per passing play. Actually, yeah, that's right. And then the Cats, 6.0 yards per rushing play. Ray Davis, Jaton McClain have been a nice little 1-2 combo for the Cats. Davis, one of the league's better all-around backs. Florida giving up just 3.7 per rushing play, just 5.7 per passing play. Gators not forcing a lot of turnovers, though. Just 0.5% of the time. Again, Kentucky turning it over 3.2% of the time.
Ooh.
One of these where, yeah, that's a weird number there, because you would expect Kentucky to take better care of the ball. Didn't really like what I saw out of Devin Leary with some of the decision making and just being off at his throws. But Florida's really not made anybody pay for it so far. So, which way does this go in turnovers could be a factor in how this turns out.
Yeah, Devin Leary was pretty good on the quick game, the underneath stuff, but when he tried to push it down the field, either maybe short arm to throw or two there, throw it into double coverage one time, not great with decision making down the field. And that's a big part of what they're going to be able to do if they do get that running game going, because Dane Key is that guy that can hit some big plays down the field for him at receiver. Of course, we know how fast Barion Brown is. They have Tavion Robinson, who's a good receiver as well. But if they cannot get Ray Davis rolling and Jaton McClain rolling in this game against Florida early, then I expect Austin Armstrong to dial up pressure after pressure and come after Devin Leary and force him to make accurate throws down the field, which he has not had the ability to fully do at times this year. I think that Liam Cohen, Leary, those receivers have yet to 100% hit their stride. They've seemed to always pick it up in the second half of ball games here for Kentucky. Truly kind of a second half team, but you're going to have to get off to a fast start against a Florida team that has proven, hey, they can stop your run a little bit, because Tennessee, we thought going into that game, we know Josh Heupel and how much he loves to run the football and how good those backs are at running the football for Tennessee. And Florida largely shut that down against Tennessee. So it's going to be a challenge for Kentucky to do so. And Chris, I say that with, how high I was on Kentucky coming into this year. I really thought that would be kind of all the right ingredients for a really terrific recipe there in Lexington. And they haven't performed their greatest yet, but we'll see if they put it all together offensively against the Gators Saturday.
Well, one thing Florida's been great at is maintaining discipline. 33 yards and penalties, although, there was that huge one that really hurt Florida in the Utah game. But since then, Florida's kept penalties to a minimum. Kentucky getting penalized for 68 yards a game. And some of those have been very damaging, take points off the board type penalties. So be on the lookout for that, although Kentucky being the home team, that might even out a little bit. Florida ranks 40th in special teams in SP+, Kentucky 15th. Kentucky has found much more consistency in the field goal kicking game this year. And, of course, with Brown, always maintains that explosive potential in the return game. Okay, Blayne, the lines and computer numbers, Kentucky is a 3-point favorite with a 46-point over-under. That makes Kentucky a predicted 25-22 winner there. FPI has Kentucky as a 1-point favorite. SP Plus has Kentucky as a 6-point favorite. Jeff Sagarin has the Cats a 3-point favorite. Average that together. The computers and the odds makers expect Kentucky to win by about 3. Basically, what everybody is saying is these two teams are dead even on a neutral field. And Kentucky gets 3 points by virtue of being at home. That's kind of the way that I think through this. So, like, if you just ask me who's got the edge, it would be hard for me to know. When in doubt, I'm on team here, which is Kentucky, but nothing would surprise me.
Yeah, I think, Chris, it's all going to come down to which team is able to thwart the other one's running game. If Kentucky can come out and stop Florida from running the football with Etienne and Montreal Johnson, which is easier said than done. Just ask Tennessee because they ran wild on them. Maybe they want to look at and see what Charlotte did to them. I know they had offensive line, guys out, but that was a little bit less of a stellar rushing effort for Florida in that game. With Deion Walker, with J.J. Weaver, with Trevin Wallace, several other guys along that defensive front that are playing well right now. I think Mark Stoops right now. I trust Mark Stoops in big games, even though Billy Napier beat Tennessee last week. I trust Mark Stoops with what he's done. Couple 10-win seasons there at Kentucky, winning his coach all time at Kentucky. I think he's going to make that environment into a tough environment for Florida to come into. Those fans are going to be excited. And I think they're going to stop the run early, and Devin Leary will get a little bit more help. Ray Davis will run it efficiently early, I believe, and then they'll be able to hit the play action pass on the Gators. So I just think I trust Kentucky's defensive front a little bit more than Florida's at this point. But like you said, I could easily see the Gators winning this ball game, but I'm going to go Kentucky in a close one.
Yeah, Kentucky's defensive front was very disruptive against Vanderbilt. And I think for Florida, again, some of those problems boiled down to just having those three big offensive linemen out against Charlotte. So I think this is as big of a coin flip matchup as we've had all year. Can't wait to watch it. We are previewing every single SEC football game this season involving FBS teams. We also do a daily football show from 11 to noon Central. Hope you'll catch all those. For Blayne Gilmer, I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14, and we'll see you again soon.